Chronicles of Darkness, Vampire the Requiem, Requiem for London. Tonight, we set our scene once again in the holding rooms of the Sheriff of East London. A glorified slab of concrete with shabby metal roofing, only dimly lit by a large light bulb hanging on thin bits of thread. As Violet enters, she can smell the stagnant water that is slowly pooled in some of the corners. This place being nothing more than an area to hold the most undesirable of kindred kind, maintained only for that purpose. In the room, funnily enough, no sunroof. The roof is the only part of the building with any serious maintenance to it. It's secure from sunlight.
That's fair.
In the most well-lit part of the room, the center of it, you see the sheriff, Mort Kozlova. Relatively broad man with his well-kept arming sword by his side. And behind him, clinging to the remnants of the light, are three other figures. Three kindred, all female. The one on the left looking you'd say the most beaten up. Has taken numerous, what would be fatal wounds to a mortal. Numerous stab wounds, probably caused by the sheriff's own sword. What appear to be scratches or tears on her flesh where she may have been clawed.
Is she conscious or unconscious?
Conscious. She appears surprisingly cognizant in spite of her injuries.
A Nosferatu, or like not clear what her clan is?
It's not immediately clear what her clan is. If she is a Nosferatu, she doesn't bear the regular markings of the clan. No outward deformities. So if she is, they're inward. In the centre, there's a rather colourful looking woman. Somewhat tan skin, bright blue, pink and purple hair. Many piercings on her ears. Some blue eyeliner.
Cyber, I guess.
Yeah, she definitely has that sort of almost retrograde look going on. Black hooded jacket with a white shirt underneath. Intricate pattern on the back of the jacket, but it doesn't appear to have any particular meaning to it. Imagine it's just there for the aesthetic. She doesn't appear particularly injured, although, like with all of these kindred, they have stakes through them.
Right.
And the third is another woman. She appears to have something resembling a pea coat on. Short brown hair. Looks the youngest out of all the kindred here, at least physically. Was probably embraced relatively young compared to her fellows. Bit shorter as well. Quite slender. Has this almost hollow or desperate look in her eye. You can't quite place it. You would almost say her face has a perpetual sense of urgency to it. Maybe she was surprised when she was getting staked, or maybe that's just her general expression. You're not particularly sure. But she looks perhaps the most formally dressed out of the three people here.
That's fair. Do I recognize any of them?
Roll me your intelligence politics. Or streetwise.
Gonna go streetwise, I think.
Sure, go right ahead.
3 successes.
Three successes. A success for each kindred. Okay, we'll start from left to right. The kindred on the left is a kindred by the name of Ali Parker. Usually just called Ali. She's a member of the Circle of the Crone. And it shows she's quite well built. Quite muscular. And she definitely has the body language of not giving a fuck that a lot of the crone tend to carry with them.
This is an alley cat, right?
This is not, no, it's Ali Parker, not Ali Cat.
Awesome. Okay, had to clarify because I was a little confused.
The conflict between the sheriff and Alley Cat would actually probably be a pretty close fight. Alley Cat is very dangerous in a fight.
Honestly, I wouldn't doubt it.
She is a neonate of the Circle, doesn't have really much of a reputation for anything, really. In fact, you almost struggle to place her anywhere at all. All you really know about her is that she's of the Circle, and her name's popped up a few times down at the back, but not really over anything major, just in casual conversation. From a few people that may have known her, or associated with her, or struck some sort of minor deal, boon, or for cash, things like that. Not really anything significant. She's almost invisible in kindred society. The kindred in the middle is an independent called Rachel Lowe. Quite the prolific figure. She's a maquette for hire.
Right.
Known for dealing with working for Lynette Altrincham, a Ventru PI. She's Lynette's direct subordinate and acts as investigator and occasionally instigator for the various covenants when they need a bit of plausible deniability. So far, she's done quite well for herself, although she's made her fair share of enemies. That has caused some amount of trouble for Lynette. But other than that, she's generally considered highly effective, if not somewhat mercenary, due to the fact that she is an independent. She has been, of course, suspected of many foul incidents within the city as a result of that reputation, but nothing has been proven.
Remind me who Lynette is again?
Lynette Altrincham is the direct superior of Rachel Lowe and a little, you would say, coterie they have going. Partnership? Lynette Altrincham runs a PI firm and seems to have Rachel Lowe on retainer as part of that PI firm. Officially or not, you're not sure, but she effectively is an extension of it.
Alright, that's fair. And the third kindred?
Third kindred may be the most interesting. Her name is Bailey Rye, and she is a revenant of some age. She is quite well known because she has survived for so long. She has survived for at least a decade as a revenant, which is no small feat. She is one of the oldest revenants in the city, and one of the only remaining revenants in the city. They were all largely wiped out a decade ago, when the Stryx initially infiltrated the domain, and then the revenants were some of the first kindred to be targeted by the various hunter orgs within the domain as well, leading to an even further freefall, or even faster freefall in their population. But Bailey seems to have survived it all somehow. And that is the big question mark.
Sus.
Needless to say, she is a revenant. She is suspected of all manner of things, and even when she isn't, she's looked down upon at best. Actively hunted or even assaulted at worst. Her reputation in the city is poor because of her lack of lineage, but there are some who see her survival for what it is: impressive and suspicious.
That's fair. Checking back in with the sheriff, am I dealing with Mort Coslover again?
Yes.
Excellent. Violet will turn to the sheriff and nod and say, well, I was summoned, I suppose. What is the issue gone?
I have furthered my investigations into the kindred of this part of the domain, and who may have been connected to the freefall of the mental state of Zhu Ying. My investigations have yielded these three suspects, who are known to have been most closely associated with her at the time. likely the only ones that could have impacted her in the way that she was. However, my abilities to instill the fear of God in these individuals has not resulted in much information. I would have you investigate final truth.
Violet will nod, and after a moment of thinking over what she's already learned, she will, I guess, can I ask questions with aspects when someone is staked? I can't remember for the life of me.
You can. They can't talk to you, but you can use Auspex on them. Auspex doesn't rely on its subjects being conscious.
Alright, I'm gonna roll Auspex, and each of them is individually getting asked the question, are you working for the Stryx or an operative of the Stryx? Fuck.
I wonder if Stryx was actually based off of Styx. Probably was.
Well, the river Styx is a river of the underworld, so...
Actually, yeah, almost certainly. Anywho, make that roll. As you approach the three suspects, the sheriff will say, "I'm placing a great deal of trust in you, Miss Delta. Whichever way you tell me to swing the blade, so it shall swing."
Violet will actually turn back, and with a quite sincere nod, like, there is actually a glimmer of respect in the way that he speaks, in the way that, like, her gaze falls upon him after he speaks to her. And she says, "I do take this quite seriously, and I do appreciate the amount of respect. I have some suspicions on what could potentially be going on here, but I can only give you an answer once I have interrogated them." She'll pause for a moment, and then give a nod and say, "That being said, the fact that I do take pride in this, I wish to give you the most accurate I know how to speak, results possible." Out of character, just don't mind me, I'm really tired.
That's okay, friend.
Specs dice again.
Yeah, we'll have you roll one dice for all three. The questions won't be split between the three. You'll just get the number of successes in questions for each kindred. So if you roll 3 successes, you'll get 3 questions for each kindred.
0 successes.
Ooh. Okay. What was your check? What are you rolling for?
Oh, you asked me to roll 3 dice, so I did.
Oh no, you get 3 questions. If you were to get 3 successes, I was just giving an example.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna roll with my actual pool if that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Be intelligence plus empathy plus Auspex.
Successes.
There'll be 2 questions for each kindred, each suspect. So, which question do you want to? Which questions do you want to ask the first kindred, Miss Parker?
Sorry, I'm going over my notes because I'm trying to figure out what questions I should ask. You mentioned that at least one of these was a member of the Circle of the Crone, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Violet will specifically turn to the Crone and ask, are you working for the Stryx or operating in any part on behalf of the Stryx?
Your beast reaches out but finds largely shadows and uncertainty. Either this individual isn't working for the Stryx or is unaware that they are.
Come again? Sorry.
What your beast discovers is either this person is unaware that they're working for the Stryx or isn't. There's also the possibility that your Auspex has been unable to read this person's or discover this person's secrets. You don't know though. You don't think it's being blocked. Usually when your Auspex is blocked, it's obvious. So either this person is unaware or they aren't. But it's one of those two.
That's fair. Before Violet asks anything else, she's actually going to turn to the sheriff and ask why in particular they were brought in, on what evidence. Like, clearly not asking because she doesn't trust, but because she wants to, like, figure out more specific questions, if that's okay.
Ali Parker had been associating with Zhu Ying for quite some time. Several months, in fact. I had learned after your initial investigation that she had taken a sudden interest in Zhu Ying's well-being. Her claims were that Zhu Ying was deteriorating before they had met and had wished to, in her words, further her revelations so that she may be made whole again.
Out of character, can you repeat that last part to me again?
Further her revelations so that she may be made whole again. Circle proselytizing. Preying on the vulnerable, no doubt. as cults are wont to do. Miss Lowe used to work on and off for Zhu Ying, but over the past 2 years has been assigned to work against her. She's been sabotaging her interests for several years now. This took me a great deal of effort to discover, and no small amount of prestation was expended in bringing this information to light. But she has been attacking everything from her material assets, or rather her physical assets, to her financial. What's interesting is this appeared to be a personal vendetta from Miss Lowe. She was assigned the job by a buyer, but she offered to do it for free. This does not fit Miss Lowe's MO. She is, for all intents and purposes, a mercenary. She is paid in either money or prestation and then fulfills a service. To do something pro bono
is unusual.
And of course,
And the last one. Oh wait, no, never mind. Go on.
yes, Bailey Rye, Revenant. Hunted for sport by Zhu Ying, though she always failed in capturing her or killing her. Bailey Rye has all the motive in the world to seek revenge against Zhu Ying, although I would question whether she would work with the Stryx, but as a Revenant, she has been known to be in contact with them, voluntarily or otherwise. She would be one of a few with access to them, or at least the knowledge to acquire such access. Revenants are known for being particularly vulnerable to the manipulations of the Stryx. While she is not as old or as powerful as the other two suspects, her motive is stronger, and her knowledge regarding the manner in which Zhu Ying deteriorated is more relevant.
Violet will turn and look at Bailey and ask one of her questions, which is the same one as she asked Allie. Actually, no, sorry, I had a different question, but brain shorted out for a second. She'll ask, why were you attempting to harm Zhu Ying and... Well, actually, right, she wasn't actually harming her, it was the second one. Sorry.
That's okay.
Violet will ask Bailey what her interest in Juyin was.
Your beast unearths very dark feelings of desire that stir in your chest, almost morbid curiosity, a desire to see someone spiral. You were granted the vision almost of Ali as a blind woman leading a blind Zhu Ying off the face of a cliff, falling together until you hear the sound of them striking rock, a very viscous sound, as the vision ends abruptly.
Well, that's Violet will ask Bailey, do you know why Juling was losing her battle to her beast?
You find yourself running down a street, down a small network of alleys and side streets, running from an increasingly feral Zhu Ying, screaming at Bailey, taunting her as if she were her prey, as if she were game. The chase continues for what feels like minutes. Zhu Ying toying with her, circling her around, slowly circling her, outpacing her from street to street, shoving her into a wall here, tossing a bin or some detritus at her there to cause her to trip and lose her footing, as if to run her down, wear her down. If Zhu Ying had wanted to kill her off a bat, she might have been able to. But she attempts to savor the moment. And you see that she does so. Bailey grabs a sewer grate and with her own strength tosses it at Zhu Ying's legs, causing her to lose her footing as she straddles on up to Bailey. It doesn't significantly wound her, but she falls flat on her face in a rather embarrassing fashion as Bailey is able to slip into the sewer grate. And while the sewers are dark and foreboding, the screaming of Bailey's pursuer slowly fades as she gets further and further away. Bailey seems to know these sewers well, but Zhu Ying does not.
by the sound of the screaming, did Juling follow her into the sewers and then get lost?
From what you could tell, she seemed to enter frenzy. At least, that's what it appeared to sound like. Bailey didn't see it. It would appear Bailey knew Zhu Ying as she was deteriorating. And perhaps, through this vision, suspects that it might have been Zhu Ying's own actions that were causing it. Her own hunting of another person for sport isn't exactly the keystone of a right-thinking, humane, and rational person.
Can I make an occult check?
Mm-hmm.
Do Stryx tend to live in the sewers? Like, when they're found in cities, I guess, do they go into sewers or spend much time around, like, dark, cavernous tunnels?
Normally I'd have a significant penalty for anything regarding the Stryx, but given you have had interactions with them by this point, I'll say you may make the dice roll with only a -2 dice penalty. The knowledge is still heavily concealed, but you've learned a fair bit about the Stryx at this point. So yeah, go ahead, Fran.
Yeah, I just gotta check something real quick, because I just realized on my sheet, I don't know if something got updated. I have a dot of both occult and politics. I really should have known that. I just didn't get it added to my sheet.
That's fine. You can apply those dots here.
One success.
Okay, you know the Stryx avoid the light. They hate the light. Not regular mundane light, as in torches and street lamps and that sort of thing, but sunlight. They hate sunlight. They're perhaps even more vulnerable to it than kindred are. Kindred will burn in the light, but they can't survive it. A Stryx literally cannot even approach the light. It acts as an impenetrable barrier to them that will destroy them. If they're encased in it. So, the Stryx tend to cover dark places, although they tend to congregate around places of death. Murder scenes, haunted houses, morbid places, spots of spots known for their deaths or suicides, things like that. A hangman's tree, a particularly high bridge.
At that, Violet will turn to the sheriff and ask if the Nosferatu have reported any, or there's been any unusual activity in the sewers of the city or in the World War II bombing tunnels.
Over a decade ago, the sewers were, in many ways, still are the stomping grounds of the revenant populace, or was until they were all wiped out. It was also known that the Stryx were among them, and the Stryx made their homes amongst the sewers. Did you spend your second question asking Bailey whether she was knowingly involved in
I'm trying to remember.
in Zhu Ying? Because I said you asked that question of Ali, but I just wanted to know if you asked the same question to Bailey, because that'd be your second question.
No. Violet asked 2 questions of Bailey, but it wasn't the working for the Stryx. But can I roll again for aspects for Bailey?
I'm going to say no. Once you've asked your Auspex for the scene, that'll be the only Auspex you can roll on their character for the scene. At least of that particular type. You could roll an Auspex 1 instead, or you could roll Auspex 4 if you had access to it. You could, of course, unstake her and ask her questions face to face.
Alright, Violet. I think in that case, Violet will actually unstake Bailey, but before she'll do that, she'll turn to the sheriff and ask if Bailey can be unstaked TM.
They are secure here. They cannot move from their spot. I've made sure of it.
Violet will nod and go and pluck the stake from Bailey's chest.
Bailey takes a surprisingly human inhale, but otherwise reacts to the situation surprisingly rationally. Why am I here?
Violet will let the sheriff answer on that one because she's just going to watch her for a second for kind of any indication that she's concerned or worried.
You are suspected of causing the fall of Zhu Ying's descent into the beast.
Quick empathy check.
Sure.
Was it composure empathy?
Be with empathy.
Thanks. One success.
Upon hearing of Zhu Ying's fall to the beast, She doesn't seem surprised, but she certainly seems relieved.
Violet will kind of think about that for a moment before she'll look at Bailey and ask. She was hunting you, no?
She was a monster that deserved everything she had coming to her.
Did you ever retaliate or cause any of that?
As in me not laying down and waiting to die? I suppose so.
I didn't say that. I saw the vision of that night where she chased you into the sewers. Was this the last time that you saw her cognizant before that?
I didn't see her much after that. I'm glad I didn't. She sounded a lot like them.
Them as in...
I don't like going into the sewers anymore. Haven't liked going into the sewers in a long time. Not just because I deserve better than to sleep beneath the dirt of everybody else. But because there are things there that even kindred should learn to be afraid of.
Violet listens with actually quite a neutral expression. Like, she doesn't have any actual hatred for revenants or think any lesser of them. They're just kindred like herself, somewhat. But, she'll nod. By that, do you mean the Stryx? Or do you mean something else?
I mean the birds, yes.
Violet will nod, and do you know of a woman who is tall, scarred, long black hair and a feathered gown? I believe her name was Ellen.
I've heard of her before, yeah. Even paid a visit to us revenants once. Didn't have much to say. It's never a good thing when you come down from your towers to visit us. It's always blades or guns or molotovs.
What did she speak to you of?
Taking something back, rising up, deserving better. I've heard it all before. I heard it 10 years ago. We all know how that ended.
Violet will again. Did you hear of any rumors of Juling being caused to go insane by anyone else?
She drove herself insane. She was a monster, it was no secret. She was one of the old prince's executioners, torturers. She was always a murderer and a killer and a thug.
Do you know if she was very dedicated in her humanity, I suppose?
Humanity? You saw my vision and you know she was never human.
I do not doubt what I saw. Violet will give this actually a quiet undertone of respect. She's very genuine when it comes to her investigations. She'll hide what needs to be hidden, but she has no reason to be hostile towards this woman until she suspects that she had something to do with it. Did you ever see her in a cognizant state of mind after that night, or was that the last time you saw her?
She barely seems to try and recall this. Well, it's clear she seems to hardly relish the thought. She seems mildly nauseated doing so. The last time she came to hunt me again, she didn't remain herself for very long, or perhaps she just let her old self out. She surrendered to her beast pretty quickly. When she found me, she said that she had been trying to fight me on the wrong terms. That a predator needed to properly recognize its prey. So she let it out. Willingly, I think.
I have some suspicion she was being manipulated from the outside by what I can only think of is an owl. Would you happen to know where we could find this Elena woman?
No. We were smart enough not to ask questions and to tell her to leave. Quickly. We didn't want to find her, and we didn't want her ever coming back. We knew from the start precisely what she was.
And that is...
You're the investigator.
I have my suspicions, but I would like to hear it from someone else who has witnessed her in person.
She was an owl. wearing a body. Probably one it had suited to its needs. They can do that. Sometimes takes them a bit of time. And the corpses and the mortals, they decay pretty quickly. But the kindred, they can take that. They can stand the test of time.
So there is a Stryx running unchecked around the city. Fantastic.
I think it would be silly at this point to think that they were ever gone in the first place.
No, London has hundreds of years of unguarded tunnels which they are probably deeply entrenched into, but one coming to the surface is unusual from what I've heard.
Is it? I don't think it's that unusual.
You've had long-term experience with them now.
No, when I see them, I run from them. That's why they hide. So they can get the jump on us.
Violet will not. Like, she's careful, like, she's actually giving quite serious consideration to the Revenant's words, so...
I've seen what they can do. I've seen them destroy the only family I had left.
Violet will nod, and will look to the sheriff and say, I don't believe this one is to be suspected of assisting in the deterioration of Miss Julie. From what I've seen of what I have read and her words, she is innocent.
If that is your word, then I shall trust it. But the question remains, who among those two is guilty then?
Violet will nod, and oh boy, all this is chaotic. Before I finish with Bailey, though, I think I want to do one empathy check to just make sure she isn't lying. Sorry, I should have done that before she talked to the sheriff. I'm so tired.
It's okay, you got it, friend. I believe. I believe.
2 successes.
Okay, who's this one?
Bailey.
Bailey, okay, what do you want to know?
Was she being truthful as Violet asked her questions?
Oh, is this just an empathy check?
Yep.
From what you can tell, while she definitely had motive to act against... while she had motive to act against Zhu Ying, she also had motive to act against the Stryx. And probably had a reason to fear them the most. And she didn't appear to be lying in her statements to you. She appeared quite happy that Zhu Ying had gone the way of the beast. She seemed quite, not happy per se, but relieved to see that she had endured a rather slow and painful end. And she seemed to be quite open and honest in her experiences of the Stryx, which can be quite a taboo topic, although she is in quite a desperate situation.
Yeah, to be fair, she does have that going for her. Alright, in that case, Violet will nod to Bailey and say, I appreciate your honesty. And, I guess just moving on to sorry, I go through my notes a lot while I'm doing these scenes.
Miss Lowe. I assume she's the only one you haven't auspexed yet, so.
Yeah, Violet will, ask, Lo, is she, like, what is her interest in dueling?
You recall in a vision Rachel driving home, rain pelting down against the windscreen of her car as she drives very recklessly through the streets of London, almost spinning out next to her house in one of its small, closed-off suburbs. As the car almost leaps up off the curb, she bursts out of the door of her car, beelining it up to her house as she sort of, with quivering hands, tries to haphazardly grab her keys and open the door to what you would assume to be her haven.
Is she afraid or just...
You can smell the scent of fresh blood, mortal blood. As she opens the door to her haven, as she runs into her living room, you see the horribly, almost a couple of mutilated bodies, actually. They're almost unrecognizable. Rachel breaks down crying on the carpet.
Does Rachel give any indication to who these people are or why they're important?
She doesn't say much. She bursts into tears, but you would imagine they were quite close to her, or she was close to them.
Okay, Violet will ask her other question in, did she have anything to do with dueling's deterioration?
You see Rachel setting up wiretaps. You see her loading a gun. You see her breaking into a warehouse. You see her
The warehouse that we're holding these kindred in?
no, different one. Can't tell where it is. No real distinguishing landmarks.
Right.
You see her pulling the trigger on that gun. You see her stealing a computer, pistol whipping what appears to be an office worker. It's a flurried mesh of sequences. You see her what appears to be hacking into a computer. You see her planting something underneath a car. Seems like she's been a very busy lady. And you see her watching from a distance multiple times as Xu Ying comes after, has to deal with inconvenience after inconvenience, disaster after disaster. The slow deterioration of her holdings, her servants, bodies, deaths, and murders. And the inability to discover who or what is committing these acts. Rachel does not look amused or happy as she stares at Xu Ying's misfortune, her manufactured misfortune. Only anticipating the next act of sabotage and espionage.
Right. Is that, with that feeling, I guess, is there any kind of like, I'm going to lead her to her doom sort of thing?
Oh, she's definitely she was definitely planning that, yes. In fact, you've seen it. She was definitely out to ruin Xu Ying's life, and to her credit, seemed to be actually succeeding.
Well, always good when that happens in kindred society. Vi's gonna turn around and look at the sheriff and ask permission to unstake her.
He gestures as if to say, "You have my permission."
Vi will again pluck the stake from her chest and just kind of watch her reaction for a moment.
She jerks suddenly, almost lurching forward. Oh, I'd never thought I'd ever speak again.
I'm curious on why you think that is, but
Well, when one of the domain sheriffs leaps at you and shoves a bit of plywood at you from the shadows, leaves a lasting impression, doesn't it?
I would say I have never been staked by a sheriff myself, but I have staked enough people on behalf of the domain.
Well, I guess you are. Of course, I'll answer anything you'd like. She seems to be trying to hide her anxiety and fear, but is only doing a pretty poor job of it.
Do you know a woman by the name of Helen? Tall, dark hair, feathered clothes.
I think I've heard of that description before. I don't know the name now.
we suspect that particular kindred to be involved with the deterioration of Miss Julie. That being said, however, what were your motives with attacking her so much yourself? You seem to be taking out a revenge plan, but it didn't seem to be that you had any particular fixed plan for endgame, I suppose. Aside from that, too, but that was kind of given.
The end game is that I'd be the one to kill her. But if you must know why... She murdered my family.
They were human, or
I wouldn't call anyone kindred my family. It's not like any of us meet the prerequisite standard of trust to really ever become family, at least in my opinion.
funnily enough, Julian was apparently repeating something similar to that in another vein. When was the last time you saw her in a full state of mind?
Full state of mind? Can't say she's ever been in it, to be honest.
She has always
Wretched
been
bitch.
unstable and close to her beast, or just someone who would be despised because of authority.
It's not as if I don't have a good fucking reason for despising her.
Well,
She...
obviously, this is an investigation. There's
Right, sorry. I didn't mean to outburst, right, yeah. Yeah, my apologies, ma'am.
To try and calm her somewhat, Violet is maintaining like the same calm, honest demeanor that she has. Like, it's nothing manipulation, just like trying to keep questions on track and not intimidating them so that they feel like more comfortable answering, I guess. Because, like, yes, this is an investigation, but she hasn't really discovered anything really incriminating yet, aside from the fact that there's a Stryx manipulating, Juling.
I guess... I mean... I did notice a change in her behaviour a few months ago. You said there was a certain woman you were looking into, like scars, bunch of feathers.
Yes, I have reason to believe that she is what is behind the deterioration of her falling to her beast.
She wouldn't have happened to be as pale as a ghost, would she?
I do believe that was the case. She also had red, gold flickering eyes.
Rachel falls silent at that. Her eyes go dead wide when you say it. Well, I didn't notice that, but she had met someone fitting that description a few months ago.
Did she speak to you of this?
Fuck her, no, I didn't speak to her. I wanted her to burn. I wasn't going to speak to her ever again. The only time I intended to speak was when I put a gun in her mouth and convinced her to pull the trigger herself.
Violet nods and, like, she doesn't seem to take any offense at the expression of this. She's just, like, mostly just listening. She nods and says, I suppose in your surveillance of her, if she had
began to become a bit more reclusive. She actually became more difficult to track. Left her haven less. Started cutting people off. I was almost beginning to become quite worried that my efforts wouldn't really matter anymore. I mean, if you become so detached, so sociopathic that you just begin severing all of your connections to the world, then what's the point in taking them away? But a few times she did start coming out again, she seemed a bit more out of it. Or even more violent and aggressive than she usually was.
Vi won't have restaked Bailey, so she'll look at Bailey and say, "This sounds accurate to what you were saying, no?"
Yes. Yeah, I saw her try and hunt the Revenant a few times. Never seemed to work out for her, of course. She was always far too smart for her. Who knew the streets like the back of her hand, and Zhu Ying, of course. Well, she's like a corporate exec, or a thug wearing the suit of a corporate exec with the strengths and benefits of neither.
Out of character, Julian was a venturer, right?
Yeah.
Violet will nod. She continues just to listen. Actually, she'll turn back to the sheriff for a moment and also ask him if that sounds accurate to the reports he'd heard before they'd caught Julian.
Julian was always considered competent by direct, although his deterioration did seem to accelerate or become noticeable in the past few months. It is difficult to record these things. The process is often slow and subtle. You can see it in the eldest of our kind. Compare them to when they were first made. They would be indistinguishable from each other. But to see change is difficult. To come back from it's almost impossible.
Violet will nod and look to Rachel and say, "If you are cleared innocent of this, once I have finished my questioning and have tracked down the culprit, if you would turn over your records of her deterioration to the sheriff, then that will be, I suppose, a good way to help us prevent the spread of the Stryx in the future."
Oh, of course, I had no idea Stryx was involved. Of course, you'll release me if I do this, right? I mean, I need to reach my tablet and my computer and everything. Can't give you the data from here. Mistake in my chest.
Yes, understandable. There seems to be a picture painted around a Stryx taking over a kindred who was slowly deteriorating her to madness. Physical evidence of that will be useful in future claims that someone may be influenced by the elves or for other forensic purposes. So
Yep.
you are determined that your involvement, though it did seem to cause some levels of distress to her, was not her final uncoming.
Yeah, a shame.
Something about
best served hot, depending on who you're talking to.
Violet actually gives a small smile at that. Like one of her very rare smiles, but it is amusing. Like nothing threatening, just a small amused smile. That being said, the information that you have given is quite valuable. Now, if you will excuse us for just a moment, I believe I would like to have both of you restate for just a little while. She's like trying to be polite about it, but there's only so polite you can be when talking about staking someone.
Yeah, Bailey seems relatively unfazed by this, but Rachel says, "Oh, wait a second, you said you'd release me."
Yes, but the investigation is not done yet.
Yeah. To help you, I have to be released. I have to get this information for you.
If you can provide us information as to the whereabouts of the Stryx, then yes, I can.
I can find them for you. I can find this woman for you. To which the sheriff says, which means she doesn't know where they are.
Violet gives a quiet nod, because, like, she's very much not an interrogator, she's a fucking investigator, for God's sake. She's just trying her best.
No, wait, I need to get that. And then you just hear the hammer blow almost of the sheriff just flatly shoving the stake back into Rachel.
Violet nods in thanks to the sheriff, because she's socially awkward being.
Believes that one. He just points to Miss Parker.
What was that? Sorry.
The sheriff just said that only leaves this one, and he just points to Miss Parker.
Violet will quietly move over and restake her. Do I need to roll, or?
Do you unstake Miss Parker? I don't think you did.
In that case, no. And with that, she'll turn to the member of the Circle, the Crone. But actually, she'll pause and look to the sheriff. Out of character, how much would Morgan have permitted me to tell about the whole, like, the Circle of the Crone that are technically not the Circle of the Crone?
Why, she would have very sweetly told her dear Violet that if you could just keep this a pretty little secret between us, that would just be dear.
Alright, Violet will, in that case, she'll just turn to the member of the Circle of the Crone and use her last vision to ask if she's a member of the Chaos to the Sanctified's order, like my notes said.
I believe you already used your 2 questions on Ali.
No, I only used one.
It was...
It was specifically if she's working for the Stryx.
Yeah, and also why she was fascinated with Zhu Ying.
No, that was, Oh, yeah, it was. Right, fuck. Sorry. I was going through my notes and I swear I'd saved one, so it was Sorry.
I think you did. I think you didn't use, or you only used one question on Bailey, to be honest.
No, I used both for Bailey.
Okay.
Alright, Violet will unstake the member of the Circle of Crone and again step back and watch her reaction.
She almost doesn't react. Her eyes open, but she doesn't really move.
Just checking, she hasn't got the golden red flashing eyes, right?
Not that you can see. Then again, it's not a reliable means of detection. Stryx eyes don't always show up as gold. It has to be in a very particular light. Just as the light reflects off of something in their eyes, really. Doesn't always show up
Light,
properly.
Like what?
Oh, pardon?
Lights like what?
Oh, just in general. It doesn't always... Stryx's golden eyes don't always show up in a kindred properly. It's not consistent, to your knowledge. It's perhaps the most frequent way of detecting a Stryx, but it's also most unreliable by far.
That's fair. Violet will actually peer at her for a moment, like, examine her for any signs of being a vessel herself, but she will calmly ask, let me check my notes. She'll ask calmly, when was the last time you saw Miss Drooling in a whole state of mind?
Well, that's an odd question to begin our interrogation. I suppose I have never really seen Lady Zhu Ying in a completely clear state of mind. She was in great conflict when I first met her.
Conflict.
Yes, she was struggling between the self-imposed mask that had been pushed onto her by the domain, her duties, and her superiors, and her true self, as it were.
Her true self.
She's a woman that had been dealing with a great deal of repression. I felt great sympathy for her. I too had been in this position in my distant past. It is never a joyful thing to see such traumatic events happen to another, even if they're not on the same side.
Do you know a woman by the name of Helen? And by any chance?
No, I would not.
Empathy check.
Yeah, sure.
I want to see if she's lying.
Mm-hmm.
One success.
I don't think she is. Not sure. Can't really tell. It's a pretty straightforward statement, really. Pretty much all the kindred here have generally answered that way. The only kindred who really purported to have seen this person before was Rachel. who didn't recognise the name but recognised the personage. Bailey claims to have not met this person before, and pretty straightforwardly, and so is Ali.
Bailey said that the Ellen came down to visit them, is the thing.
Oh yeah,
She
sorry.
directly
Bailey did
told
say
them
yes.
that.
Bailey did say yes. She did know them. Sorry, she didn't. Yeah. So this is the only person claiming not to know them. Sorry. Bailey had definitely met them. My bad. I did say that. Yeah. Because she was a revenant. So yeah, they'd known each other very briefly. And Rachel had spotted them mainly because they were very distinctive and stuck out, but did not know the name. And Ali is claiming not to have met them before, but there's no reason to really doubt the statement.
That's fair. Violet will nod and say, in a particular vision I saw, there was something about you leading Julie to both of us. Could you perhaps tell me why that is?
Pardon? Sorry, could you repeat that out of the character? I didn't quite hear it.
Violet saw a vision that indicated that Ali was leading herself and Jolene to both of their destruction, and Violet was asking if Ali could give any explanation for that.
Destruction? By the heavens, no. I was attempting to guide her to her salvation, a new beginning, not destruction. Well, I suppose from the perspectives of those outside the circle, many would accuse us of bringing innocent kindred to their destruction.
How would you lead her to her salvation if it is difficult for a kindred to be saved from her beast?
She was collapsing under the weight of her material losses, her inability to see within herself. As your other suspect there stated, her life was being destroyed before her very eyes, and she had not the means to find a way to fix it, to repair this growing wound in her requiem, as she struggled in conflict with her beast, a fundamental part of herself that she could not cope with, she could not fight. I simply yearned to teach her how to make peace with it.
How so?
A very simple question that involves a very complicated answer. I'm not sure I'd be able to explain it in its totality here. I suppose, to put it in layman's terms, a variety of lessons meant to show one how to best communicate with their lower self. To show them that really there are no such things between lower and higher selves.
Alright, I actually need a little bit of help on where I need to go next, because I'm not entirely sure how to progress from here, because Morgan would know more about how to get information about the Stryx or about the alternative members of
the circle, the crowing, the sanctified heck. Just I'm not sure where to go, and I could use a tip.
Okay, roll me a quick intelligence investigation real quick, and depending on how many successes you get, you'll be able to discern a certain amount of information that should help you in your investigation. You've actually acquired quite a lot of evidence here.
5 successes.
Oh, an exceptional, okay. So there are 2 immediate issues with divulging the truth from testimony. The simple fact is that if anybody, whoever, considering that you know that this Ellen or Elon is involved in the corruption of another kindred and their potential conversion to a Stryx. No one would willingly admit to knowing this individual unless they had some sort of plausible alibi for knowing them. Certainly no one would admit to aiding and abetting them. So, if a person does know about them and is aiding and abetting them, they're just going to lie about it. And it can be a bit difficult to divulge the truth from an individual, unless you have a means to contradict them, or can piece together evidence that may suggest that's where their motive lies. They'll certainly twist the truth to make it appear as if they're not doing such a thing. Now, from the evidence you've gathered, there are at least 2 individuals here that have clear motive against Yu Ying. And that would be Rachel and Bailey. Both of them were wronged by Yu Ying in the past and sought revenge. There is, however, a bit of a gap here, and that is, do they have motive to seek out the Stryx to assist them? Because these motives for revenge and hollowing out Yu Ying for a Stryx don't necessarily line up. Hollowing out, making Yu Ying vulnerable for a Stryx deliberately would be a separate motive than revenge. Not exclusively so, but they're much less likely to be intertwined. A kindred could try and convert Yu Ying to a Stryx for revenge, but the process would be long, extremely risky, and endanger the individual doing it in ways that would put them at undue risk. It's also something kindred just in general are unlikely to do. All kindred fear Stryx.
Yeah,
Stryx,
fair.
Stryx are the natural predators of kindred. Hollowing out a Stryx either involves a psychopath or someone deeply spiritual, not really someone seeking personal revenge. It doesn't quite line up properly. The other thing we have to examine is whether they have motive to help the Stryx, or what motive they have in regards to the Stryx. Now, Bailey has clear motive against the Stryx. While she does appear to know them, it's very obvious she clearly hates them. And all revenants that have survived the events of the past 10 years have more or less been cleared by the Domain as working with the Domain to be rid of the Stryx. So it's highly unlikely that Bailey is your suspect here. Not impossible by any stretch, but highly unlikely.
Would it be okay if we divided this scene into 2 parts, just because I do have the thing now?
Okay, I'll just give you the final piece of information.
Thanks.
You have Bailey. She appears to dislike Yu Ying, clear motive for revenge, but there's evidence to suggest that she would work against the Stryx, not help them. And she's been very forthright. Rachel. Forthright out of self-interest. To a degree. She's clearly looking to get released and was clearly looking to manipulate you to try and get herself released, so her honesty is dubious at best. She does appear to be acquainted with Elin in passing, but doesn't appear to know her name. But that could be a lie. She definitely has ample motive for revenge, and was actively in the process of doing so. If she was angry enough, she may have worked with the Stryx, but not a ton of evidence for that right now. So, could go either way. As for your final... Oh, sorry.
That's interesting.
As for your final suspects, Parker, or Allie, she's the only one that appears sympathetic to Zhu Ying. That doesn't appear to have at least an immediate motive against Zhu Ying. Certainly not one of revenge. She appeared to want to help Zhu Ying, so she doesn't appear to have a motive on the face of it, at least. But she did want to change Zhu Ying. She openly states she had motive to alter her mindset, which could be code for she's acting in the interests of the Stryx.
That's fair. That gives me something to think about until the other half.
Alrighty. And I think then with that, we will end the scene there, and then we'll continue the scene another day. Thank you for playing. Thank you watchers for watching. We'll see you all next time.